Frank, your interest in music. So was it something you've always loved music, or was it something you were taught, or was it your family, your father? Where did the interest come from? Was it something always there?
I suppose it came from a few different sources. Yeah, a few different sources. I had this need in my soul to follow music. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I remember, I might have told you before even, I remember when I was very young, I got a little battery operated racing car for Christmas, and my sister got, this was, wouldn't have been more than 8 or 9 at the time.
Yeah.
And my sister got a guitar, and guitar in those days now wasn't a great instrument, It would have an action about like an inch off the board, it would kill you to play, but just the luxury of, in those days, of being able to get a guitar and make a sound out of it was just enough. So she got a guitar anyway, and I took up the guitar and I put my ear to it and I just played something, and I was hooked straight away. That was it. That was music for me. I was now become straight into being a musician.
Yeah. And what would you have been listening to? Like, what type of music would you have been listening? The radios are totally changed now. Like, you've anything out to touch your.
Yeah. Well, again, look, like going back to that early story with my sister, like she had the guitar for Christmas, I had the racing car, so I swapped the racing car for the guitar. Now she wasn't thrilled with having a racing car.
I wouldn't say.
She turned out to be an artist herself.
Yeah,
that was that. But I think inside me as a person, there was a need for soothing.
Yeah,
and music was that medicine. It's like the sound of an instrument resonating to you, give you peace. That peace was a great comfort to me, and so I stayed with that peace, as far as I could. And it just drove me to learn. And of course, at that time, the media was developing, begin to see pop bands on television, even though television had just arrived as well, So it's all very much a different environment to what it is nowadays. But what was your question there, Mr.?
Yeah, it was like I watched a documentary, Rory Gallagher. He sort of said it was hard to come across.
Exactly.
He was importing stuff from the States.
Yeah.
And he was importing stuff from the States, records, Donny Donegan, all this type of stuff. As regards, you have everything now on the touch of a button, which all your clouding music.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been hard. So when you were playing them first few things, was there any? I want to play like him. I want to play
very,
like him.
Very little. I mean, that's what used to kind of bother me about even the new rock musician. I couldn't hear. It was very hard to hear anybody that sang and played a guitar. Actually. Strangely enough, even with Radio Luxembourg and Radio Caroline and all those things, you still rarely hear somebody sitting down playing. It's always this big wash of a band behind it, drowning out the guitar. You might hear Bob Dylan occasionally doing an acoustic. That was an exciting thing to hear someone playing an acoustic guitar and with a voice, because that's all I wanted at the time.
Yeah, you wanted to sound more. Yeah.
And then, of course, things happened fairly rapidly after that. I remember hearing Jimi Hendrix for the first time. That just knocked me out altogether. I was gone, I was just so mesmerized by there was almost a fear or an evil in the music. It was a mixture of things. It was threatening.
Can you remember the first song you learned?
The first song?
Yeah, can you remember the first chords of that?
It was probably A House of the Rising Sun or something.
Oh, very good. Go with the lyrics.
At least it wasn't Stairway to Heaven.
You should have picked the short one.
Stairway to Heaven hadn't been invented yet.
And then what was the next step then? Did you, around your area, was there other guys playing? You were the musos in the school.
It was like that's how isolated it was, And like my background, aside from that, like my father never stopped singing. What he was singing was kind of a whole mishmash of tunes. He was into kind of older style jazz book, American jazz book sort of stuff. The pop hits of his day. He'd be singing them. What was the one that he used to sing? Maybe tunes like Lady Be Good or something like that, there was one particular one, I can't remember it offhand, but it might come to me. But so it was a strange thing about him, was he used to go like this all day. And when he'd be busy doing something, he'd get more intense. with humming and hawing all the time. We used to call it how, and he never stopped from one end of the day to the other. So that in a way was, a subtle influence. On top of that, I had a lovely woman, a housekeeper at the time. We were living in Stawullen, County Meath, and a lovely woman called Dolly Goff, and she just sang everything. She was a big Jim Reeves fan. She'd be singing Larry Cunningham. She'd be singing anything that was on the radio in those days. She'd know every song, and because she was at the age she'd be going to dances.
Yeah.
She'd be picking up more and more songs, and she just had this. She could, if you had a conversation with her, she'd come up with a song.
Yeah, Jim Reeves. I remember my mother, and then the show bands were huge.
But she'd be going to see the show, so she'd be picking up on all the music of the day.
The guy who went to Vegas, and Brendan Boyer, wasn't it?
I think a few of them did actually, but Brendan Boyer did, yeah. But yeah, she'd be going to Brendan Boyer and all that sort of thing. And she was a big influence, and she'd be into Marty Robbins. Not that I would have had known about Marty Robbins at that time, but it was so much later in life that I came across her. Johnny Cash. I kind of thought that fella can't sing, when you're young, you're very harsh with your critical thinking, it was like the same thing with Bob Dylan, Astrid can't sing,
I remember telling I got introduced from my sister. So my first, I probably shouldn't say this to you, but I'm going to anyway, was the Osmonds at Shawadi Wadi.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah. And then my brother, he was away. He came back, and it was, the Eagles left and stuff like that. So I sort of went, I apologized to my sister. So I sort of moved a bit towards my brother.
But I was the same. My sister is into the Osmonds as well, and I forgot to say.
Yeah, Donny and Marie.
Cassidy's.
David Cassidy.
And a few others like that.
But it's amazing the influence in the house. And you were saying there about Johnny Cash. Elvis, just I couldn't figure out why people liked Elvis.
Well, I'm exactly the same. I said, what's so big about it? I mean, it looks great. It's a bit, I don't know. I always found it a bit milky or something, but not really. It doesn't scare me. But when you see the Stones on television and Top of the Pops, they'd scare you,
They're
and Jimi Hendrix was completely scary. It's just like that, the eyes and the big woolly hair and the black face and everything. Like as a kid, you were just, Jesus Christ. And the sound, the sound was this big fucking heavy sound.
I remember the first time I seen Philo. I was going, Philo was so cool. Like,
yeah.
He was always so cool. I always remember, like, Old Town, that song. He looked so well walking down the street, and I remember speaking to people who met him a few times. But then it's funny, I was saying about Elvis. I went to Graceland about 10 years ago, and I loved it. I just, I admire what the.
But you know the way you can be dismissive when at an early age, and later on in life you get to realize why these, people are not big for no reason. Everybody that's famous is there for some reason. That's a good thing.
Like there was so many, but the artists back then, and like Dylan opened the door for so many people. You then you started going on. You were learning the song. When did you first start say this is definitely what I like, and you maybe get into music with other people? Or
when I went to secondary school, I was a day pupil, and I went to a boarding school, which was just down the road from me. But I was a day pupil, and they were all boarders. I was going to college, and so you had people coming in from all parts of the country, and they'd be coming in with their album collections. And all of a sudden, I was going home with, I'd be talking to these guys, and anybody that basically had long hair had to have some sort of album collection. So you just follow them, and that's where I just picked up a whole new dimension of music, but up to that, practically nothing apart from Radio Luxembourg. And you see, in those days, like, you couldn't learn a song, because you'd no tape recorder.
Yeah.
No way of recording or playing back. You had to wait until it came on the radio.
Yeah, and if it came on the radio, you had to catch it properly.
Yeah, and how would you catch it anyway?
You had to, or else you have somebody DJ talking over the start to finish.
Yeah.
It's like the most important part of a song.
Oh yeah, as such, it's, you'd have to go to a record shop and buy the single. But again, there's no record shop.
Yeah.
So you were just, from somebody growing up as a musician, you were snookered at all points,
Yeah.
But you see, maybe that's the thing that makes you crave it more, is because there's nothing there for you. You have to go and work for it.
Yeah.
Like I often, a friend of mine and a co-associate, Pete Cummins, like he often mentioned.
Yeah.
He often mentioned his early days, and when somebody got a guitar for Christmas, and he remembers 7 people like sitting around steps to get a go at the guitar, you know, including I think Bruce Shields, and I think also I think what's your man that does the boy bands. Welch.
Louis Welch.
Louis Welch, I think, was on the scene at the time. No, I could be wrong. There's somebody like that anyway. And they were all just couldn't believe a guitar, you know. And it was probably a crap guitar. How did you tune a guitar even?
That was the thing. So where did all that come from? Like, again, this is what I'm saying. You're back then. There's no, you know, you're not taking out your phone going, put a tune.
No, the way you tuned was you went up to the 5th fret and you tuned the next note off that and you go, is it the 5th fret and the 4th? Yes, the 5th fret. Yeah. And then for the B string, you go to the 4th fret and the G string, you know, and that's the way you tune the guitar.
You're self-taught there.
Yeah, or somebody told you.
There was a story I read, or I could have seen it somewhere, that Jimmy Page's sister said, this guy who lives across London, I want you to come meet him. He's into the same type of stuff with you. I don't know how she found it, some acquaintance. So they jumped on a bus. He got 3 different buses over, arrived there, knocked on the door, and it was Jeff Beck opened the door on the far side. Yeah. It's in the mental, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Then again, London was small back then. You had Clapton, Beck, they all went through.
They were all like that, and Hendrix. I might have told you before about my brother-in-law, who was a bass player, and he lived in London at the time, and he was kind of the go-to man for lots of things, because he did theatre shows, he did this, that, he wrote songs, but he was never famous or anything like that. But he played bass, and he played keyboards and big guitar. He was in a squat, which he lived in those days. You know, a lot of people lived in squat, where you take over a floor of a building that's not being used. So he was in a squat, and one of his friends came in one day and said, "Hey, Steve, you got to hear this fucking guy. He's coming into playing in London tonight somewhere. I don't know where is it. I can't remember the name of the place he was playing." I says, he's an amazing guitar player, you know. He says he's looking for a bass player, you know. There's nobody around to play bass, you know. And do you think you'd be interested in doing? He says, this guy's really good now. Steve says, no, so I'm too busy. I've got a fucking wedding tomorrow. I've got this, that. And the guy coming into London to play was Jimi Hendrix. He was looking for a bass player.
No Reading. No, I think he moved to Cork, I think.
Yeah, but Steve went to see Hendrix a few times in the early days in the Rainbow Theatre place, and he described the sound. He says the sound live is just something you've never heard before. You can get the sense of it on a record, but it's only when you get it live. It was a huge sound, you know.
You can imagine seeing it. But my 2 daughters, and one of them there recently picked up, I think, they said, "Hey Dad, did you ever hear this album?" And it was Pink Floyd, you know.
Yeah.
But I'd love to be back there hearing it for the first time, like that.
It's all these things for the first time, but especially Hendrix. Like, you know, when you think of what an electric guitar was like in those days, it was like the Shadows, you know. The Shadows. That's the way an electric guitar sounds. Yeah. Funnily enough, his brother-in-law went to see the Shadows, and he said they were the loudest band he ever heard in his life. It was ear-splittingly loud. You know?
Hank Marvin.
Hank Marvin. Yeah. But, you know, that's the night he went to see Hendrix, you know, Paul McCartney was there, the Who were there, the Stones were there. Everybody was there to see this amazing phenomenon, you know.
It must have been
incredible. You know. So, but anyway, that's probably nothing to do with me.
Well, no, isn't it great though, going back to them things? So these guys then, as you were sort of coming along, you were getting better, you were tuning now, as we were saying. You were tuning. Well, this is the instrument for me. Did you go electric, or did you say acoustic, or what way?
Yeah, we didn't really have the opportunity of going electric. A neighbour of mine across the road had an amplifier, and I managed to get a cheap Shaftesbury pickup, I think it was, for the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
We lived in a stone house, so it was a big enough house. We rented it. Our family rented it, you know. So I could play down the kitchen at full volume, and people could be in bed and not hear it.
Right.
Which I regularly and I used to just practice feedbacking with the acoustic guitar off the amp, you know, and getting all these weird sounds, and like an acoustic guitar feeding back off an amp is, you know, you'd be afraid that the guitar burst apart. So I did all that stuff.
And there was the thing, you would have left it in to get the pickup put into it and everything like that, would you? You drilled yourself in the way you went.
Made the pick.
Yeah, just the way they were. It was great.
That's the way things were. And yeah, so then, like, but Gormston was a huge booster for my musical education because there was music rooms there as well with pianos in them. But unfortunately, the teaching methods were very out of date. They were just, it was classical format and that was it. And if you couldn't manage classical, well,
It's very hard when you have no interest in it.
You just like I did piano for 5 years, in school, and I never got beyond page 1 of the preparatory course. And the last day, I often tell this story. The last day, poor Mrs. Brown, she was my teacher. She was a very nice person, and she says, "Francis," she says, "I can't understand that you've been here for 5 years, and I believe you're up here every day, and you still aren't back past page 1 of this." I think it was down by the Sally Gardens. And I just remember, I never was really interested in this sort of thing. I said, "What do you play like when you're up here?" I said, "Well, I try and imitate things that I hear in records." She's like, "What?" So I played a boogie woogie for her, and the teeth nearly fell out of her head. She couldn't believe that anybody could play, from ear and not read music, or the fly shouters, they used to call it.
Yeah.
She said, "It's just how can you do that?" But I did it, I suppose, out of desperation. I wasn't particularly good, but I just had this huge desire to emulate musicians.
Yeah.
Imitate and emulate. And that was the same, I suppose, with guitar. And when I was kind of picking up bits and pieces from other guitar players, and other guitar players would have suffered the same thing as well, where they had a guitar, but they didn't know that much on it, because there wasn't much around. You'd have to maybe get a book from somewhere. You wouldn't know what book to buy anyway, or it'd be too complicated. It'd be written in classical music format. So, with not easy to read as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. You go into Walton's and there's these things, lines of books, and I remember trying to find one, and just a basic guitar. I brought it back. Your man gave it to me. It was just, I think it's still at home. It's double Dutch to me.
Yeah, double Dutch. Like if you don't know how to read it, what's the point in buying a book like that? So that's we're up against that all the time. But anyway, apart from that, second year in college, I met a guy and. He had a Hagstrom, an electric guitar, and that was a good guitar. And he came. He was a good friend. I used to run an establishment in the afternoon. The establishment being our home, because my mother and father worked at Dublin daily, So we used to hop across the wall of the college, and it was about 2 miles away, 1.5 miles away down the road, and you used to have to jump into the ditches and hide in case anybody see you. Breaking bounds, it was called, So they all used to come down to my place, and we'd turn on the stereo and blast out music and play the piano, and I'd make pancakes for everybody, coffee, fresh. In those days, people never heard of Uri's coffee, especially in the country, so making fresh, calculated coffee for them was just blow their heads. Yeah. So anyway, he was one of them, and he had this Hagstrom guitar, and he says, "I should just take a loan of it, and I got a loan of it for a few weeks." But I had the loan of the Anthem across the road, and I had loaned the guitar from college. So now I was starting to happen. And anyway, I went back to the college, and he had a band in the college, and I was in first or second year, I can't remember which. And they asked me to play with them, as the lead guitarist, and that was a big deal. A little prep, getting the job in the senior band in college with all the seniors.
That's a huge,
And I was completely bluffing it. I don't know what I did, but I could do maybe 1 or 2 songs, and I was actually Hendrix stuff that I was doing. What's this? What's the one that he does? What's it called? It's not the House Rising Sun. It's kind of like what was the
Roundhouse, or what's it called? Purple Haze.
Oh, it wasn't
Southern House.
Red House. You wish you could do Purple Haze.
Red House.
Red House would be one of them. Yeah. So we get into that. But there was one. Hey Joe was it?
Hey Joe.
Hey Joe, that was the one. So I could do Hey Joe, and I knew all the words. That was enough to get into the band. Yeah, and I could do lead guitar solos with the wangy arm. Yeah.
Were you singing as well?
Oh yeah. But I just seem to have. Whatever it takes to get up on stage and start singing and start playing. No, it didn't frighten me.
Yeah, well, sure. Look at that's where we're going to be heading down the road in a little bit. So we're going to be talking about that influences then. So that was the Hendrix one was a big sort of part.
Yeah,
you know.
But then there was the whole wash of influences from Dolly, you know, the old country scene and Johnny Cash. So all that was a kind of mishmash of stuff. And then, you know, there was at home, there was, you know, records that wouldn't particularly interest me, but one of them was Russ Conway. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was a very flashy piano player, you know, and so that kind of interests me because it was flashy piano playing and it was nearly boogie woogie at times, you know. But yeah, things were, you know, music tastes were very conservative in those days. You know,
Yeah, I think you were with the guys then in the band. Did you go? Was it one gig or did you do a few gigs?
One or two gigs. It was in college. They were playing to the students.
You didn't go outside that.
No. So my first gig was playing to 300 people. You know,
many person out there would like that.
It's bad to start from the top though. It can only get worse. You know?
That's the thing. And then anyway, you moved out of college.
It wasn't that much later. Funny enough, it all seems much later, but yeah, I was looking for work. I couldn't get work anywhere, you know, after leaving college. And this is it's college. I'm talking secondary school, not university. And I didn't have the desire to be academic, you know. Didn't take those at all, you know. Yeah. So getting a leaving cert was enough for me. I was just more of an artistic inclination, you know. In fact, the only honor I got in leaving was an art, you know.
Yeah, look at art is a great, yeah.
So going to Dublin, then you know you'd be limited in what sort of jobs you could apply for. You'd be limited as to what sort of jobs you could get. Your computers were just about to happen, but they were big fucking washing machines in those days, you know.
Huge section.
And one of the jobs I got actually was in St. Pat's Training College. It was the first job I got. Well, actually, apart from weighing lorries for Tato, that was my favorite job.
There's a few packets missing off the back.
No, it was a potato warehouse, and all the farmers that come in from all around.
Over the weighbridge.
Yeah, the weighbridge.
Yeah.
So I'd be weighing the trucks on the weighbridge, and occasionally I'd be let drive one, you know, and that's exciting. But the characters you'd meet, we just used to sit there and laugh and half the day weighing at the same time, and I just really enjoyed that job.
Just some great characters.
Yeah,
not many around anymore.
Huge
characters.
People that they were
funny people.
Yeah, but anyway, that was just a short-lived summer kind of job, and then I went to Dublin and couldn't get a job, and applied for Everton. I wanted to get into computers. I got a short-term job in St. Patrick's Training College, collating intelligence test papers actually, which was very interesting, and I really loved that. And I applied everywhere to get a job as a computer trainee, whatever. You didn't even know one, but they just, you know, most people wouldn't even respond, you know, in those days to people applying for jobs. You know, it was really hard going. You know,
a lot different, wasn't it?
It was late. That'd be kind of when was that? Early 70s. You know. Yeah. And then I finally got a job in an artist shop, funnily enough, and that lasted a few years. I'd kind of, in that period of time, I was going up and down to Drogheda. I had left Stimone at the time and moved to Dublin because they wouldn't give us the house anymore, actually. So that was a real heart-wrenching move for me.
Yeah, huge.
You know, it was like the place I was brought up in 20 years there, and next thing to be wrenched out of it. And we were lucky to have a house to go to in Dublin, you know, very lucky. My grandmother died.
Well, look, you said, yeah, well, you know, yeah, it's just unfortunately. Yeah.
But anyway,
thank her, yeah.
You know, what's the saying that with every
the silver lining or something.
Silver lining, it lives in silver lining or whatever. But I had something to move. But so there was an interim period of years where I was still attached to the country. I couldn't. My heart was broken to leave my friends behind and people that I knew. And I had a girlfriend in Drogheda, and there was a kind of a good music scene in Drogheda, quite an advanced music scene actually in Drogheda, but it was a folk music scene. You had the Voice Squad were in their infancy in Drogheda, and that was back in the 70s, early 70s, you know, so this was harmonized folk music, you know. But there was one guy there, a fellow called Brian Leahy, and there was a brilliant session down by the docks in Drogheda, in Carberry's, a place called Carberry's, a little pub. It was owned by Mrs. Carberry, and she used to, I never forget the sign over the wall was Cunis Linen and Cure or something like that. So she was very, like, every session that was played there, everybody, it was quiet. This jumping in and gargling and shaving the head off when people were playing music. It was all full respect. So that was a great learning place. I met all sorts of different musicians there, and there was even a double bass come in, and you'd have Brian Lee played 5-string banjo, he played mandolin, he played fiddle, and he's very much into bluegrass because bluegrass had very much come on the scene because of Deliverance. The film at the time, and Bonnie and Clyde, people had started to discover this amazing sound of the banjo, the 5-string banjo, and I actually got a 5-string banjo, bought it off Brian Lee, funnily enough, way back then. But unfortunately, Brian Lee, he died of asbestosis. And we were all brokenhearted because he was only about 32 or 33, and it was a huge loss. It was a terrible loss.
Drogheda was a great town for music.
Yeah.
Even I remember kind of going out there myself, and there was a great music shop, the Sound House or something. Sound shop. There was always musicians around, like great pub music. I'd go to gigs.
You'd have the show band guys coming into the sound shop and that sort of thing. So there was a great wealth of stuff there. That was a huge help. I mean, that was the first place I saw a dobro being played.
No way.
And a Brian Lee here again. That pedal steel there. I saw him playing pedal steel, and he was really kind and helpful, and he'd welcome you in. I was at a party one night, and he had the pedal steel there. And jeez, I so love the pedal steel. It just does my head in. It's so beautiful. He says, "You sit down and play it," And this was a party. She said, "I would never fucking do it, play it." And he said, "You just see these groups of strings." He said, "Just play that group, press that first pedal there, and press." And I couldn't believe that I was playing something.
It's brilliant, and it's so country. But it's such a distinctive sound. It's beautiful.
It's an incredible instrument.
And the dobro as well.
And the dobro, but even more so the pedal steel. The trouble with the pedal steel is it's hard to lug around the place. It's a dobro is handy, but so around about that time I bought a dobro and pedal steel. It was actually a couple of years later I bought the dobro and the pedal steel from Brian Lee's wife. He was apparently going through a hard time, and I went up and bought them. I was going through a hard time myself, and I hadn't got a lot of money. And I said to her, I really love these instruments, and in honor of Brian. And she said, "Look, give them to you." And the one thing she says is, she says, "If you ever sell them for profit, you'll be cursed."
Look, I know. I thought they know.
Would you believe that? Like, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years later, a fella offered me 500 or 600 quid for the dobro, and I really needed the money. I was going through a bad time, and I said, "No," I said, "I really can't." I said, the person who sold me that, I said to be a curse on it. And then I made so it was a great tribute. I mentioned him on the album, the dobro album that I made with Gay Lynn in 1992-3. So that was a huge sense of honor and joy to them to see the name of Brian being put on. That was the first time the dobro was on an Irish album, So that was a huge thing for them.
But he was so young. It's so sad, fellow like that.
But he would have been a big influence, and all the lads in Drogheda, Fran McPhail and Jerry Cullen and Phil Callery, God rest him, he died there a few years back. Because they had a lovely broad selection of music, from gospel to trad. As I said, trad was coming back. Paul Brady was. In fact, I saw Paul Brady in Drogheda at that time. When he used to sing the good old folk classics. He'd stick you to the wall.
But back in the 70s, and you had so many, you had Christie was the only thing with planks. With planks,
there was an explosion.
There was a massive explosion. And you had what was the Botti band?
Yeah,
they were sort of in the, wasn't it the late 70s? They were coming out.
That's great.
Yeah, they were sort of.
What about and Moving Hearts?
Moving Hearts, they were
late 70s as well, weren't they?
Yeah. Moving Hearts, all this explosion, and that was a real sort of the trad stuff. It was great,
Yeah,
it was great. Yeah, I like it. It's great stuff. Great stuff.
But anyway, it's moving along at a snail's pace from that. Then we got, I came across Bluegrass session in Dublin in Taylor's Hall, or what used to be,
Yeah.
and was the Sackville String Band. I used to go and regularly see. They'd be on every week, and they'd be bringing in all sorts of anybody that Neil's owner used to tell me this. He used to go to Dublin Airport, and if you saw anybody coming in a plane with guitar, he'd go up to them and say, "Where are you from?" And he actually discovered music. I can't remember which musicians he discovered, but he discovered musicians that way by going up and talking to people like maybe Peter Rowan or somebody like that. They'd be coming to Ireland, and because there wouldn't be big PR in those days, or the big, online PR machine that you have these days. I played with the Sackville for a little bit as well, Dover as well. I was getting very much into bluegrass and very, very affected by bluegrass, buying vinyl albums. And you could get them in Dublin now. You could get this shop. I can't remember the name of the shop now. And Sandy Hirsch, she was the woman. What was the name of the shop? Was a genius on country music and folk music, and she stocks the shop, and she bring in the albums from America. And that I was never heard of before. And she was very kind as well. I remember, I had a bit of a job at the time, and I used to go down to her and might buy 2 albums, or maybe even 3. I'd come back to her maybe the next week, and she'd say, "Well, what do you think of those albums?" "I didn't really like that one." And she'd take it back,
Shady back,
she tried to do that. You wouldn't get much of that these days.
Would this type of stuff being? We spoke about Dylan earlier. What a big influence on Dylan was a banjo player, but a Pete Seeger. But he wasn't really bluegrass, though. He was more sort of country, wasn't he? It sounded
he more belonged to the folk revival as regards, as separate from bluegrass. Like bluegrass is a modern music, actually. People think that bluegrass is traditional. It's not. It was created by Bill Monroe, as a particular style of music. He created the whole, the banjo, mandolin, guitar, bass, fiddle, and there's a fairly strict structure in bluegrass music.
So the lineup then, when you were playing with the lads, what was in the lineup of that band you used to?
It'd be that. Fiddle, banjo, mandolin, maybe me and dobro, or there'd be somebody on guitar, and there'd be double bass,
Double bass,
So it was a full bluegrass band, and they'd have 2-part harmonies, and it was a great band. And they'd have guests up and that sort of thing. And, there wouldn't be a whole ton of people going to the gigs either, So Neil Toner was a great advocate of bluegrass music and country music in those days. He was a stalwart guy, and still is. On the flag for that particular music, and did an awful lot for it. So we wouldn't have heard of it if it wasn't for him. So he did an awful lot. And moving on from there, anyway, while I was still doing that and learning new songs and bluegrass songs as my kind of repertoire, I went down to a session one night in Kenny's in Kennedy's, Lincoln Place, which is behind Trinity. And I went down once, and I think Paul Brady was there, and Andy Irvine and Johnny Moynihan. I went down with a friend of mine, and it was too packed. And I was a bit claustrophobic in those days. I couldn't handle packed places because there was a kind of a star line up there.
When you're smoking and everything.
But anyway, I went down the next week, and Johnny was there with somebody else. I can't remember it, to be honest. I sat in. I had the cowboy hat on, and I played the dobro. Johnny couldn't believe it, He so I ended up playing with Johnny Moynihan. Was from Sweeney's Men and Planksty, and originator of Planksty, and so he was a great songwriter and collector. Johnny's still alive, and he lives in Kildare and Galway, and I occasionally meet him. He's a great folk character altogether.
Massive on that, as a saying,
So it was through that that the Flat Cowboys actually came about. Myself and Johnny were playing for quite a while, doing these gigs. Next people started coming in, and other musicians started coming in because they liked what we were doing. And so you'd have a drummer coming in, and then you'd have a bass player, maybe an electric guitar, and we were, myself and Johnny were both acoustic, so it was kind of like
you were in
a meeting of forces, that were kind of conflicting in some way, but yet making something in another way, So
these were those open sessions, weren't they?
They were just open sessions. So you'd have literally a drum kit out on the floor of the pub, and you'd have maybe and it was beautiful mayhem of it.
It's organized mayhem.
Organized mayhem, and it was lovely, So that went along great for a good while. You had people like Jimmy Faulkner coming in, and
Jimmy
was great. He was massive fun.
So Jimmy was I
was mad into Django Reinhardt as well. Like, that was another music that I'd never heard anybody playing before until I saw Hot Foot and Jimmy playing, and I could, just blew my mind as well.
Well, yeah, he was so he didn't like the limelight. He'd sit in the back, but it was beautiful. I remember seeing him in Slattery's numerous times,
Yeah.
And there was in Slattery's, where it was upstairs in Slattery's, there was sessions on a Sunday or Saturday and that. But there was two sort of poles, and the stage was there, but Jimmy would just be behind the pole. You hear this music coming out of it. He was and a lovely, lovely fella.
He was a great guy, great guy.
Lovely fella, it's tragedy.
But that's so Pete Cummins was in and that, and then then somebody offered us a gig in Tulla. It was called the Tulla Barbecue. It was a friend of Johnny's, a fellow called Pat Talty. But Pat Talty, he ran a gig from his farm. He was vet, and the gig was held in Cowside. He played Cowside out to the audience, the barbecue audience, and that was our first gig as the flag. Well, we actually hadn't got a name at the time, and it was on the way back. I remember I think it was in the Falls in Ennistimon, Falls Hotel. We met there for a cup of coffee or a pint on the way home, as you would in those days, and Jimmy was, that was great. We should really get a band together, keep this going with Johnny and blah, 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 And Johnny had a great song called Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Into Flat Cowboys, And it was a parody, Jimmy loved that song, and everybody loved it. So then here we were with this band that was, had some pretty hot players in it.
So year-wise, where are we talking? What did
85, I think. Maybe... sometimes around 80, 84, 85. There was actually a band before that, which I'll get into in a minute. Yeah, it was around about that, around 84, 85. I always based it on, when did I do the Ross Thompson? Most people base it on, when did I get married?
Yeah,
for me, 00 BC or whatever it is, when did I do the Ross Thompson?
Isn't it brilliant? Great, I love that.
There's the trick.
We'll get into that in a few minutes. You got by so we'll get into sports in a few minutes.
But anyway, where was I on that before I mentioned the rest? How did I mention?
You were 84.
Oh yeah, 84. And so the rest was history, as they say. But before that, I met up with a guy called Carl Mallon, and we played. There was a great gig in the International Bar in Wicklow Street. Upstairs. This was before it was a comedy club. It was just a little upstairs.
We had blues club.
Yeah, there's a fellow called Tom Horn now. He used to organise a folk night, And I remember Tom arranged a gig with myself and Colin Mann because he liked what we were doing. And it was myself, Colin Mann, and a young comedian called Father Ted.
Dermot.
This is before Father Ted.
Sure.
He was only starting off,
he was only coming on that Mike Murphy show and stuff like that. He's
something like that, yeah. And so
man,
that was our kind of our first gig, And then we auditioned. John Knox, who was playing with Spud at the time, they were a fairly big revival folk rock band at the time. We auditioned Don, and Don came in, and then we came up with a name. It was called the One-Eyed Rattlers. And then we got bass player Smithy. He played with everybody. But he was a double bass player. So that was a very nice band. People used to come and see that band. In fact, a lot of musicians, I remember Something Happens when they were young. They used to all come and take the front row, practically. They were mad into to us for some reason.
The type of stuff you were doing, like, what was it, a broad spectrum or just
It was
genre?
kind of broad spectrum. Like I was kind of covering the bluegrass, the what was I doing? You know, Hank Williams, Jimmy Rogers stuff. You know,
Yeah,
and people loved that stuff. You
yeah,
know, but they also loved the other stuff. Like Colin and Don would do more kind of send up sort of stuff.
yeah,
So the band was like, it was very entertaining, and we used to stuff the place. Like
yeah.
we that place couldn't hold more than, I don't know, 60 or 70 people. We had about 150.
I remember that. Well, I remember the venue, and it was just it used to be great because,
Yeah.
as you were saying, claustrophobia
Yeah.
again. But this was town back then. This is Dublin back then. You went to
You
venues.
could park on the footpath outside.
Yeah, Wicklow Street, for anybody who
Yeah.
doesn't know, isn't a big street. You were upstairs, the same as Slattery's, as I said, the Saturday afternoon. Another club not too far from there was a place I used to go regularly, was on Bale Buff. I think,
Would you believe I lived above the Bell?
no way.
Mick Gleason.
Yeah.
And he was my landlord. Jesus, that
was a great spot. It's so rich.
And
But you didn't know who you'd see. As Frank was saying when he was playing, like, you'd have these bands, bands they coming in, but anybody could be there.
I remember we were playing a gig in Slattery's. We had this young girl from Galway coming up to do support for us. Her name is Mary Coughlin. Just everything was just
great.
coming up from nowhere, you know. And then, like, we started the hardcore. The flag was kind of,
yeah.
I think we started the gigs down in the basement in the hardcore, and then other people came in.
Sunday, wasn't it? Well,
yeah, it was Sunday afternoon.
It was it was just after the holy hour, wasn't it?
Yeah.
About 4 o'clock.
It's kind of very anti-social time, really, but it's just to back out. Then the people, there'd be a nighttime gig as well, which didn't often do very well, you know, because people were burnt out. Like,
we were burnt out. I was in a youth but we were burnt out, you know, because you were fairly lively. Yeah.
I remember this band from Cork used to come up, and I used to pity them, you know, because they were a great band, Stargazers, you know, and that was John Spillane.
John, yeah.
You know, and it was a fantastic band, beautiful music and everything, you know, and so he was in the band at the time, and he left the band after it became.
He went solo.
Solo, which
John's he's some lovely style, lovely, great player.
Yeah, amazing,
great player. Yeah,
I ended up doing sound for him, you know, because I used to be the resident sound engineer in Cobblestone upstairs, you know. Except for Paul Lee, we kind of, it was Paul Lee running the gigs, but I was the resident sound engineer and advisor.
No matter what. I bet you some people came through the doors there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell you. I remember Tommy Emmanuel coming through the door there, and I do the sound for him. That was.
I think it was over that because a friend of mine lived around the corner. We used to go in. But phenomenal, I think.
Well, I'll tell you the story, Tommy Emmanuel. Like, I'd never heard of him before, right? And I was doing this, the lineup on the night was a band, original material, you know, quite a complicated band, 6-piece setup, and then Tommy Emmanuel, you know, and so I was down there early, set up, ready for any band coming in that wants to do a sound check, you know. And I think I did the band sound check. I can't remember what the name of the band was. And then this guy came in. Yeah, it's a guy freaking name's Tommy Emmanuel. And blah, 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 you know, a lightning melt, you know. And I was there behind the desk, you know, having a cigarette, relaxed and all the rest. And he says, great to meet you, man. You know, I'm playing here tonight, playing guitar. You know, and all right, okay. So what do you want? You know, he said, I want 2 DIs, I want this and that, I want that, and I want 1 DI. I want you to put that through a separate channel, and I want you to turn up the bass full on it. And I said, Jesus, that's queer. He had different pickups on the guitar, and I'd never heard of this guy before, but apparently he'd been touring around the country, picking up a huge following. Because he'd do gigs for 3 hours, you know, just non-stop energy. I went to see him there before Christmas in Vicar Street, actually. He's still as good as ever. But so the band soundcheck, and Tommy got up on stage and started playing, and I was, Jesus Christ, what's this?
Phenomenal.
And to me, you were doing the sound for this guy, you know. I said, fucking hell, you know. And I loved doing the sound and getting it as big and beautiful as possible.
But nice in the system in there.
And he just said, Frankie, you know, I've been around the whole fucking country. I've been around Europe. He says, that's about the best sound I've had all over. He probably said that to everybody. That was...
No, I wouldn't, because he was always there. Because he came once, and then he played there 2 or 3 times, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember seeing him. He was after being there, and a friend of mine had seen him, and we went another time. And because I remember him going up. It's good to be back here. I
Yeah.
always kind of think, but there was always a great sound up there. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting beside you, but there was always a good sound.
Yeah.
You know, it was a great venue as well.
But anyway, to finish the story, Paul Lee came in, into the dressing room. The dressing room at the back, when the sound checks were finished, Tommy, he was hanging out outside, and Paul came in and says, all right, man, so what do you think for tonight, And I said, actually, I think you've got the wrong order. I think the band should go on first for a small while. Then you should let the beast on. And next thing, Tommy comes in the door. I totally agree with Frank, actually. He says, no offense to the guys, but I'm going to fucking blow them off the stage.
And it's such a unique style, brilliant.
Yeah, and then it was an amazing gig,
But there's what we were talking about when you were saying about your brother-in-law in seeing Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was like. It was like he was, when I seen him, I was going.
Yeah,
like there was a guitar player he used to play with. I can't think of it. Tony Boylan was his name. And he used to play with. Can't think he did a gig with us. I'll think of his name in a minute. Tony Boylan was a really brilliant guitar player. He used to. Oh God, I can't think of the name in the band. But yeah, he used to play. But he was a really good player. It's great seeing people like that.
Yeah. So anyway, going back to the whole progress of bands and blah blah blah. I had the Rattlers, and I was playing with the Flash kind of at the same time as the Rattlers, and I had to go to the Rattlers and say, look, this band, might do big things, and I'm going to actually have to, knock it on the head because I'd be often missing, So the lads were fine with that, and they got somebody else, Robert Harrington, who was a great entertainer. So and then the Olympia started, midnight at the Olympia, and that was really. And again, another major happening.
That went to a different stratosphere, really.
Yeah.
It was it was such a thing back then in the city,
Yeah.
I mean, the Olympia, the Flash, I mean, the Olympia, because again, when you dropped in, which I did a few times, you never know who you see.
Yeah, we had all sorts of people come on stage. Usually somebody like the Pogues would join us on stage, or the Hot House Flowers, or Water Boys, or anybody could come in, or like Nancy Griffith, she often came on stage when she was around, or just loads of different people, the Chieftains, anybody that was in town would come to play.
This was the thing, if they were in town, they'd drop up.
Because it was an amazing gig, because you had a really hot band on stage. In Austin, Texas, there's the band there, the Western Swing Band, but they're really hot players, and they, if Willie Nelson was in town, Willie Nelson would be playing with them. They'd be that caliber, So the Flash were kind of the Irish version of that.
But that was it. But this didn't go on at 4:00 in the afternoon or 7:00 at night. No, this went on from midnight. Yeah. So this is where to go at Dublin back in the day, back in the late 80s, 90s. It was where you go.
It was a completely novel idea, and
but you're playing in the Olympia Theatre. It was, you had all your different tiers.
Yeah,
it'd be packed.
Yeah, and 2 bars, 3 bars.
Yeah, you have,
and the bars are packed.
Standing up on the seats.
It was incredible at times. It really was incredible at times. And, apparently U2 used to come and see us, and we didn't know. I didn't know about it until afterwards. People like that, you wouldn't know who'd be in the audience either.
Well, frankly, it was a night's entertainment. It was a great night's entertainment.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, like it was a great night. I was lucky enough to have been once or twice. And when I went to Lee Mulvaney was up just the night the same. I can't remember who was on the next night. But but like you'd walk out and everybody'd be happy. It was never really any trouble or anything like that.
No,
great.
The only trouble actually was from staff.
Yeah,
they wouldn't let people dance.
Tell us about the night and you supported a famous artist, and then you went back there. Tell us about that night. There was a change of energy.
I'd never forget it. Yeah, I remember it was U2 were doing the Rattle and Hum tour. I think it was with BB King, and I think it was with BB King. Was it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. But we got the support gig for it. Support slot was on the Point. And I thought, oh, well, this is going to be a big one, And it was a big one, we went sound checked and everything. I couldn't believe the setup on the stage. Like, I walked on the stage and there was 2 kind of almost like wings rising up from the stage. And when you looked through these grooves, you saw a whole team of engineers working on things with huge racks of gear. And I couldn't believe, what the hell is it? Was like being in an aircraft carrier or something like that, you know. And this was all for Edge's guitar sound. So I thought, wow, this is amazing. It was New Year's Eve, and we had the Olympia the same night. God, you know, I don't feel like doing the Olympia now after this. And we were waiting in the dressing room anyway, and the lads from U2 come in and said, wish you well, and thanks for coming. It's great to have you back. Great, thanks a lot. And we got on stage, and we knew nobody in the audience. And nobody in the audience knew us either. And it was like they'd come in from Germany, China, Japan. And it was just a really hard gig, you know. It really was one of those things in my career that it was a huge surprise to me, you know, that you're playing to somebody else's audience that really hadn't a clue. It didn't matter how good you were. It wasn't going to go down.
When you're on stage, you turn around to the lads going, fucking hell, it's not working. What do we do? Well, let's try this song. So nothing was working.
Yeah, you just didn't feel that was working. But we just did our stuff, and, you know, we got a polite applause and all the rest, you know, and a bit of a you do, you know, but not much of it. So it was, oh God, that was really hard, you know. Oh no.
So packed up the gear.
And we packed up the gear, and we'd arranged to have to be taxis from there, which was a luxurious thing in those days, and have all the gear brought by a roadie up to the Olympia and set up on stage, you know, so that was all pre-arranged. And I said, oh, look, anyways, we'll go back to the Olympia and do our best. It's going to be an awful come down in status going back to the Olympia.
8,000 people or whatever.
There's about 10,000 people in the fight or something. You go to the Olympia, and be lucky if there's 300 people there. You know? So, oh God, this is going to be terrible. And next thing we came around the corner of Dayne Street and looked at Dayne Street. Couldn't believe it. Up to the Olympia, and there was a queue outside the door of the Olympia going all the way up to the Christchurch Cathedral, and the place was already full.
See, that was it. That was it.
And my mother and father were there, and my aunts and uncles, and they had boxes, you know, and I was saying, wow, this is going to be fucking good, you know. And we got on, we hadn't time to do a sound check, so we had to do a sound check, basically just a line check behind the fire curtain. So the lead curtains brought down on the stage. So we did a quick check of that, you know, and then they said, Jesus, lads, this is going to be good, you know.
Yeah.
And next thing, we got out on stage, and the lead curtain went up, and the curtains came aside. I couldn't believe the size of it. It was literally from the fucking rafters down to the floor. You know, there was just, and everybody with blowers and whistles, and the whole lot, and the mood of festivity was colossal. It was the best ever, I'd say.
Great.
We did a fantastic gig, and we had guests on, probably the Pogues or somebody like that. But their queue of special guests, one was better than the next, and we played brilliantly. You know, we just wrecked ourselves.
It's brilliant. And the stage in the Olympia is a little bit of a slope.
A little bit of a slope on it.
It was an old theatre.
Basically wrecked ourselves first. And I remember. Well, I better not mention, he'd had too much to drink, you know, and he just managed to get off it. My dad had come down, you know, and he was just really impressed because he'd never really seen me come to a gig, you know, and he was really impressed and proud and all the rest. And he looked behind and he says, who's your man there? And I said, where? And he said, there. And he pointed at a flight case, you know, a flight case trolley, you know, and there was tarpaulin on it, you know. And I said, I don't know where. So look at the legs sticking out. And it was my friend Paul, and he'd come off the stage, and he just collapsed back onto the trolley and threw the tarpaulin.
It was a long way. Because you would have been in the point early.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're coming off stage.
And doing sound checks.
At 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You used to go on.
And you wouldn't be getting that to eat and drink and smoke.
It's like there's a curfew at, I think it's 10:30 now. It's mad, isn't it? I think it's around 10:30. There's a curfew, a lot of venues in the city. You know, if you go see a band, it's 10:30.
I know, I wouldn't be able to hack that, you know.
No, it's great. Like I used to love it.
I'm glad I'm not doing it now.
It's slower. But they were great days. The lads were great days. So we're sort of coming into the mid-90s then or whatever. So what was the
big offer came up for us through Bob Dylan? we did a support for him. He sent out an inquiry for the Fat Cowboys. He was starting up a record label. That's what I heard anyway.
Yes.
And he wanted to sign us up, but he really liked the Fat Cowboys for some reason or another. And that didn't happen for one reason or another. I don't know why. It's a long story, and I'm not sure even of the details of it all, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
So I kind of felt at that stage, and it's a pity, you know, when I look back on it, because we hadn't got the facilities in place to move any further with the band, you know.
Yeah.
There was no structure in place. Like, if you look at the entertainment industry these days, it's very organized. It's very, you know, there's management centers around it. It's all online. You can book online. There's so much more organizational capacity there. There's festivals all over the fucking world.
You're planning 2 years ahead. You know?
Yeah, yeah. You look
You
at the
know
Hot
what you're
House
doing.
Flowers, and they're still playing, and they're playing everywhere, you know, all over the world. You see other bands coming up, and all of a sudden they're playing all over the world as well. You know? But we hadn't got that in our day. You know, unfortunately, we kind of, well, I broke away from the band. Myself and Paul Kelly broke away from the band, and you know, it dwindled out after that. You know, we did come back later to make another album and try again, but that didn't work either. But yeah, so, like, you know, I said at the time, I said, really, we should just stay together and play a gig once a month, no matter where it is. Go back to Harker and play, and just play for the enjoyment. Forget about a career. Forget about this, that.
Yeah.
Just do our own thing. And the powers that be didn't agree with that. A lot of people agreed with me. And that was it. That was what we broke.
And the lads then, do you like you said Paul there? Do you still like you talk to all the boys? Like, you didn't sort of break up?
No,
There was no hard feelings, was there?
Not really, you know. Yeah, there was a bit of. You see, again, the band was a kind of a fluid, moving feast. You know, there was like, you could have a different lineup, several different lineups a year.
Yeah.
You know, but there was myself and Pete out front, and Paul and fiddle, and you know, the rest of the band would be changing, chopping and changing. Maybe not the guitar player, but say drummers would, you know, coming and going like that, you know, because there was other, I suppose there was other more regular work going, and it was hard to keep a band together, you know, if you didn't have the regular work.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, if you had a band like that, you'd have the regular work. You'd have, so you'd be able to sustain yourself, you know, but like we all had mortgages and, you know, relationships.
General life.
And you couldn't just be playing for the fun of it all the time.
There was a reunion gig. I think Pete organised a reunion gig years ago. It was for charity here, wasn't it? There was like,
we did a couple of them.
Yeah, bring it back together, and you had loads of guests on. Like,
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, you were sitting with Liam and Lisa Hannigan come on and played. A few other people like that.
Yeah.
But like again, they were always great. They were great.
It was a great concert.
So you look back then and you sort of go, right, you had things were different, but I don't know. I'd say there's lots of bands out there saying if they don't think it's different, but
yeah, but you know, I see the likes of you know, the Electric Picnic. Imagine if we were around for the Electric Picnic and things like that. So, Jesus, you know, it's a terrible pity, really, you know, because it just had such a sound musical core.
They were, you know, Look, I'm lucky enough seeing this a few times. I never walked out disappointed. You know, that was the thing.
Yeah,
when you can say that. About, I have seen you too a number of times, 2 or 3 times, brilliant, you know, and other times it was they weren't really. But I never said that about you guys. It's a great thing.
Yeah,
it's a great thing. So the band is sort of gone, and then you did some stuff then with Paul.
Yeah, I did. We did a few tours in Germany and to see where that would lead us, and we got by, you know, but it wasn't really leading us anywhere. Then he got a job with Sharon Shannon. She was doing very well at the time and on the way to big stardom, you know.
Yeah.
So he was with her, and then I just did other things. Did the sound engineering, and I got very much into traditional music and doing guitar backing for many the notable trad player, you know, because I used to play with, you know, in a bar called Hughes's. In fact, there was a film made by Brendan Gleeson about the bar recently, and I was in the film myself. I was played there for about 7 years every week, you know, and maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, because I'd be playing for set dancers and doing backing with so I'd be meeting really the cream of traditional players in the country coming through that place, you know. So that was a great joy, really. So it took me in a totally different direction of kind of folk acoustic type of stuff, you know. And I ended up teaming up with Eleanor Shanley, and we played together for quite a few years all as well. That kind of brings us up to date.
To date, yeah. And you're teaching now as well.
And I teach now, yeah, started teaching. Somebody, myself and a friend, Barbara Devon, she started organising ukulele classes, you know, and I said, I'll try it, you know, and I never even played the ukulele before. So I started getting into teaching kids, and we made a video actually in the Gael School here in Newbridge. The video actually went viral. I was leading a crowd of kids around the front of the school singing this song. I can't think of it now. But anyway, it was too huge.
So you were all walking around playing the ukulele.
Yeah, I was playing a bit like leading all these kids around the schoolyard, you know, and they'd be all behind me and dancing and singing, and it was kind of call response song, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody loved that. So next thing, this person rang me up and said, "We're looking for somebody like you know, which people just coming and teaching in schools." Oh God, oh dear, do I really want to?
The kids are different. Yeah, they're brilliant. But
it's hard work, you know.
Yeah, it can be. The more you come out, you're tired.
I got involved with the music generation in Kildare. I've been at that for 10 years, teaching schools, and then I'm kind of winding down.
Yeah,
I did that. I was very in demand for that. I happened to be good with kids. They were a bit like, I often liken them to a drunken audience. You know? Plenty of experience.
Plenty of experience. And then where we are now, we're in your studio. So you do a bit of work here in your studio.
Yeah, I did a lot of recording and producing for other people, you know, over the last 20 years, you know.
So the next sort of 5 years, I mean, anything you're sort of saying, you know, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this in the next sort of 5 years, or are you like me? You're not planning that far ahead.
I have
few ideas.
I have a yearning for putting together another band.
Yeah.
I have it does a kind of a, you know, it's welling up inside me, you know, because I have access to very good musicians. I have a repertoire of people. I've got my own son who's a brilliant musician. There's things like that I wouldn't mind doing, but you know what? I hate the bloody organisation of it, you know.
Yeah.
Like I was doing, when I had that El Paso band, I was just thinking the other day, I did gigs where, it was a 10-piece band. I did gigs where I provided the sound, I did the out front sound, the monitor sound, and fronted the 10-piece band at the same time.
Yes. It's an awful lot of it. You know, I spoke. I had on the podcast there. I spoke to Jude Shields of Salmi, and we were talking about that thing about arriving in a venue. You know, and the venue you could be coming on at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
but there's a crowd there. You're bringing the gear
I know,
through the crowd,
and you say, "Excuse me, could I
get through there?" And then you have to come out, and there might be a club on after. All of that.
I've absolutely no interest in that type of thing. You know, so like, yeah, I'd like to have a band really that's, if somebody could just organize it.
Yeah, I was saying to Jude, you know, I'm a drummer, and I was saying to Jude, like, I started when I playing, I have a huge kit, but now if I can get away with a power on and a set of spoons or a cajon, I'm happy. I'm walking in like this, not carrying in case after case, and flights of stairs.
What you should look into is actually, I don't know, just talking about drumming, a thing called a cocktail kit.
I've seen it. You bring them in a carry, a little, they're like a suitcase, are they?
Well,
I might be mixing them up.
No, these are real drums, and the bass drum is stores the other drums.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of one room, and the kick goes up underneath the bass. Underneath the kick drum, I mean. So the kick drum was like a cylinder. You know, I saw a fella in Canada.
Yeah, I must have a look at it.
Cocktail kit.
Definitely, and it makes it easy. And looking back, then, if you were to do it again, I know we said a bit of flack out, but maybe that'd be a bit different. But is there anything you'd sort of give advice to, say, a younger yourself? No, what would you?
I often think that, and I often have that. I often have that discussion with my wife. Actually, you know. I really just come to the conclusion that you are what you are.
Yeah.
You know, you can't really, you know, you come from a certain background, both physically, mentally, you know, you come from certain influences. There's all sorts of things at play. It's not as simple as saying, oh, I have to do it all again. I do this, but you wouldn't be able to do that without that. And then you wouldn't be able to do that without that. You know, so it's just, it doesn't work that way, basically.
I was asked a question, and that's why I like to hear from other people. Personally, myself, there's about three things I'd change. There's about three things I'd change. You know, other than that, I'm quite happy with what I've done. And
I think one of the things maybe I would have changed, or if I could, but then I don't know. If I didn't drink,
yeah,
that would have been a help.
yeah.
But then again, you wouldn't have met anybody if you didn't drink.
I keep saying it.
Yeah,
but like
that's the way Ireland was, you know.
Like I spent so much time in pubs. And
Yeah.
But then if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have gig. But then if I wasn't in that, I wouldn't have seen you guys play.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't think I could have went in to see you guys whenever having a point. I couldn't have come in.
I know, yeah.
Drank about the water.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any disrespect to any. But I couldn't have. I don't think I would have had the same crack. But then again, I might have. I don't know. I didn't do it.
I enjoyed it all. But, you know, as a friend of mine once said to me, if I ever had disasters in life, drink wasn't far away.
The last thing I'm going to leave you with this was characters you met who you're bringing in your gear into this pub or wherever you're playing. And as you're coming by, you're walking by the bar, and the comments that are said to you, you know, and it used to have me in stitches. So there was lads at the bar having their points, and there were characters.
Well, if you would, I told a story yesterday to the Lord Mayor actually of here. He went at the stitches laughing at us. He couldn't control it. It was a gig that I was doing, and it was in I can't think of the name of the place, but it's at the side of the Phoenix Park, near the zoo.
The Hole in the Wall.
Hole in the Wall. That's where it was. Yeah. Seth and Paul did a gig there one night, and a lovely gig. But they had a big potbelly stove in the pub, you know, in the middle of the pub. Freezing cold night outside, so it was great to come into the warm.
Yeah, the warm.
We did, you know, the first half and did well. And I noticed this fellow with a big anorak on him, you know, and he was standing around the fire. I was standing at the fire, keeping warm as well. This is at the break, and I was talking to him, and he says, I said, geez, are you not a bit warm in that coat, you know, standing at the fire? Oh, no, he says, I'm used to it, you know. I said, oh, no. And there's, I said, Jesus Christ, I don't know how you could take the heat of that now, yeah. And so anyway, I went out to the toilet, and next thing your man came out and followed me out to the toilet. Well, he wasn't following me, he just happened to be.
Yeah,
he was standing up against the urinal, and I was, next thing I looked over at him, you know, and next to this huge fucking anaconda. And I said, fuck's sake, I said, I've seen big ones, and it was actually an anaconda. I think it was an anaconda, but it was a big fucking snake that size.
In his jacket.
And his jacket. And that's why he had the jacket on. I was standing around the fire because the snake had to be kept warm.
Yeah.
But it was huge then. And he looked big, you know.
The big lad.
He looked like a big lad, but he actually wasn't that big.
No. Why are bringing a snake over a point?
Talking about characters. And he lived beside the zoo, so like he obviously got the anaconda or whatever the snake was from the zoo. No, yeah, that's a fucking true story.
I'm going to leave you with this one. As you know, I play a bit of music, so I got up to sing with a band one night, and I was singing a song. I think it was something by the Waterboys, Fisherman's Blues or something. But I came down and I got up and I sang with them, and I came to half time, and I went up and I stood at the bar, and there was this old boy standing at the bar, and he said, was that you, band? I went, yeah. And he said, was that you singing? And I went, yeah. And he said, well, if you're a singer, I have a fucking wood full of them. So anyway, folks, I'll leave that.
One more story that I forgot to mention. Yeah. The place through this songs of road stories, you know, it was 1989, I think, when the Pogues had just broken really big with Fairy Tale of New York.
Oh, yeah.
On the Christmas tour, the Flat Cowboys supported them. We did Wembley and places like that, but we did a gig in the north of Ireland, you know, and going up to the north, doing a gig in those days in Belfast was risky. It was always risky in the north in those days. Yeah. You just didn't feel good about it. Yeah. I think it was called King's Hall or something. I can't remember what the name of the place was, but it was a big venue anyway, with about 5,000 or 6,000 people at it. And I used to do this punk number at the end of the Fat Cowboys. We used to do very well at support pubs. We used to get 2 encores, like, you know, which is unheard of for support bands, you know. And but I used to do this punk number where I'd do the Everly Brothers Walk Right Back to Me. So it's I wanted to tell you walk that. I mean, so I'd do it gentle, you know, and then at the end of it, I changed the whole temperament of the song and I repeat, which was a compliment.
Yeah, I remember.
Oh my God, look at this.
Oh, for
And
sure.
look at all these gobs down along my chest. But what I noticed, apart from that, was all these red dots dancing around on my body as well. And I'd forgotten, of course, that the British Army were on patrol in the hall, and they were in a balcony above the hall, all around, with Armalite rifles pointed
They were, yeah.
with telescopic sights.
So they were enjoying it as well.
Probably, yeah. But they probably were.
They were going, we're getting rid of this one. We're going to take them out.
But I've never, it's such a bizarre thing to be spat on and to have
Yeah.
all these red, infrared lights going on your body at the same time as a target. You know,
That was the trouble.
if one of the soldiers enjoyed it too much and had to press the
Yeah,
trigger,
you don't, yeah. So when the trigger happens, we wouldn't be here today.
rock and roll stories.
Folks, listen, Mr. Frankie Lane, Frankie, thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
It's lovely to have you. And we'll regale more stories and all the links to Frankie, you know, we're going to throw them up there and we'll throw up a link to your singles and albums and that.
Yeah.
Folks, we'll catch you on the other side. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much again, Frank, for having me here in your studio.
Yeah,
And we'll talk to you soon. So,
Okay.
folks, thank
Okay.
you.